Look, this video is probably a bit different to the rest, but I just had to jump on here and share these thoughts with you. I've never met Charlie Kirk, but I do enjoy watching his debates from time to time, and mind you, there is a lot there I don't agree with at all, like abortion or religion. And yet, earlier this morning at Utah Valley University, someone put a bullet through the public square. Charlie Kirk was shot and killed while doing what he always did, show up and argue in the open. Whatever you think of his politics, this is unacceptable. Political violence is the refuge of people who are afraid of losing an argument. If you didn't see the post I put out on YouTube earlier, I'd like to elaborate on that too. I understand the dangers of political violence. It was at a very early age I came face to face with dissidents and the catastrophic consequences that would have for me. I have friends who were journalists, secular writers, gay people, and simply non-believers who have lost their lives or have had to live in exile purely because of their thoughts. And today, once again, reminds me of that. It's also quite insane to me that Charlie Kirk isn't this violent, extreme Nazi figure that many on the left made him out to be. He was the embodiment of the public square, someone whose entire shtick was essentially to reach across the aisle and in fact hand them the mic and have a conversation with him. By every metric in politics, that is something we should want more of. I think he himself said, if you don't talk to the other side, it is violence you end up getting. And whether you loved him or hated him, Charlie Kirk stood in the arena. And to strike him down for that is to kill the very idea of a free public square. And today, I think a very dark line has been crossed. I'm actually not so sure why, but even the attempt towards Trump didn't create this much sadness or feelings of anger within me. Perhaps it's because this is off the back of the senseless killing of Irina Zarutska just the other day, and even that I haven't been able to get out of my head. The line that has been crossed is effectively this. Charlie Kirk was a grassroots, speak to opponents type political activist. Clearly that has been seen as unacceptable by somebody, perhaps a person on the other side of the political spectrum. But when this sort of speech cannot be propagated without violence, and in this case a loss of life, it doesn't only impact the conservative side. The idea is clearly people like Kirk can no longer have a platform. They should be too scared to speak out. Similar to what I always say about rabid Islamists and their attempts to silence dissidents by making sure everyone knows a violence awaits. In this case, however, the other side is also very large and now very angry, and in America, the side that are more likely to own arms. This means people on the left, the activists, the influencers, the YouTubers, the streamers, they all suddenly need to think twice about being in public. The line that's been crossed makes political violence the norm. This is not how a civil society should function. There is a social contract in pretty much every Western nation where you trust for the most part that you will still live, despite having political views that, in Charlie's case, something like 70 million plus voters who voted for Trump had. But when voices are silenced like this, society enters a dangerous place. A place where the loudest arguments aren't made with words, but with bullets. Where those willing to kill end up being the only ones heard. That is not democracy. That is not freedom. That is the rule of the mob, the rule of fear. And if America crosses that threshold, if this becomes the norm, then the public square dies with it. It stops being a place where you hash out differences and becomes a battlefield where only the violent prevail. This, and I don't say this lightly, is a turning point, no pun intended. A turning point for the United States. Because if this is allowed to settle in as just another headline, just another casualty, then the precedent is clear. Political violence works. And once that door is open, it is nearly impossible to close. It's also been disgusting to see how fast the mask slipped for many on the left, and online platforms turned into cesspools of celebration on Bluesky, Reddit, threads where people are joking, memes shared, karma this, serves him right that. It's hard to square that with all the rhetoric about free speech and love for humanity that comes out in more polite settings. What's worse, many of these same people just weeks or months ago were implying violence. A famous influencer who I'll not name right here in Australia was calling for Americans to get violent a mere weeks ago. I won't share the video of course, but you probably know who I'm talking about. Many of these people were suggesting that force might be justified if certain views got too loud, if certain ideas cross their lines. Not directly saying, let's kill him, but using words like silence, shut them down, they need to be taught a lesson. Now, post this, they publicly backtrack, act shocked, horrified, as if their words had nothing to do with the atmosphere. Their absurd rhetoric almost certainly is at least partly to blame. Of course, some do genuinely condemn it now. Politics makes people flip. But the fact that so many had laid the groundwork with aggressive rhetoric and now want credit for taking a stand against violence after the deed, that shows how deeply normalized it's gotten. And unfortunately, they will find that fewer people are now willing to reach across the aisle and have a normal conversation, or a polite one. This is where I come back to something I've said many times before. One of my favorite quotes, actually, but when you cut out a man's tongue, you don't prove him wrong, you only prove that you're afraid of what he might say. That is why silencing voices, whether through threats, censorship, or now assassination, is so corrosive. Once people realize that speaking up may cost them their life, only the most violent will keep speaking. In this case, I think any sort of hope for mutual understanding between the left and right in the US, however, is probably gone. The fear is that this would become the norm. That is how nations slip into darkness. Charlie Kirk's death should serve as a wake-up call, not just to conservatives and not just to Americans, but to anyone who still believes in the idea of a free society. If this precedent stands, all of us are going to suffer. This has impacted me quite a bit, to be completely honest with you, and I live on the other side of the planet. All I can say is this: ideas must be met with ideas. Words must be met with words. Violence cannot be allowed to decide our future. Hey, you made it to the end. As always, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and give the video a thumbs up. It really helps. A massive thank you to all my channel members and Patreon supporters. You're the reason I can keep making content like this. If you want to support the channel, consider joining the crew. Just hit the join button below or head over to Patreon. Even a small pledge goes a long way, and I would genuinely love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.